What's poppin', y'all? MGK decided to come out of nowhere and address this viral, within hip hop at least, viral image that's been going around of the white rapper Mount Rushmore. And this was posted and it said the white rapper Mount Rushmore. And from left to right, the faces are Eminem, Mac Miller, Paul Wall, and Russ. And MGK, also known as Machine Gun Kelly, said, "Me not on the white rapper Mount Rushmore is blasphemy." So he feels very disrespected by this. Now, granted, a lot of people wouldn't have even considered Russ on there, let alone MGK. And I am someone who actually really enjoys MGK's music. Tickets to My Downfall was one of my favorite albums of 2020. I think I might have made it album of the year, if I recall correctly. My album of the year. Not hip-hop album. It was not a hip-hop album. But when it comes to MGK, I didn't really listen to him like that, hip-hop wise. So from 2010 to the first MGK song that I think I listened to might have been Rap Devil. Now, there are actually some personal reasons why I didn't listen to MGK earlier, that I'm not going to get into a personal story, but it's a funny story. I wish I could tell it. Well, I can tell it, but I'm not going to. But yeah, someone just compared me to MGK, and then when I looked the guy up, I was like, what the hell? And there was a bit of a resemblance, but I was like, man, screw this guy. I'm not listening to this guy. So I just never listened to his stuff. And keep in mind, this is 2010, 2011 that I hear about MGK. I'm listening to Meek Mill. I'm deep in Dream Chasers. You showing me a rapper that looks like that, I'm like, what the hell? I'm not even listening to this. Yes, it was closed-minded of me, but it is what it is. Now, after Tickets to My Downfall, ironically enough, the rock, pop punk era of MGK, I started listening to his rap music that he dropped afterwards, and I've enjoyed a lot of it. The guy's a great rapper, skill-wise. We have to put him up there. And by put him up there, I don't mean Mount Rushmore. But let's try and organize a Mount Rushmore for white rappers, which I think is difficult for a lot of people. I think people just naming 4 white rappers is like, oh, okay. It's difficult, especially for great white rappers that you feel like should be on a Mount Rushmore. But unlike anyone else who Mount Rushmore seem to just be top 4s instead of top 5s, we're going to actually look at what the hell Mount Rushmore really means and then try to organize this white rapper list that makes the most sense objectively based on why the people or the presidents on Mount Rushmore are there. So Mount Rushmore was carved by sculptor Gutzon Borglum, and we're going to read the exact meaning of Mount Rushmore. The 4 American presidents carved into the granite of Mount Rushmore were chosen by sculptor Gutzon Borglum to commemorate the founding, growth, preservation, and development of the United States. They symbolize the principles of liberty and freedom on which the nation was founded. George Washington signifies the struggle for independence and birth of the republic. Thomas Jefferson, the territorial expansion of the country. Abraham Lincoln, the permanent union of the states and equality for all citizens, and Theodore Roosevelt, the 20th century role of the United States in world affairs and the rights of the common man. Now, how can we correspond this to each individual on the list of white rappers? If we just take all of these, MGK is nowhere on the list. I would say, if we were to start it off with George Washington, right? Or let's just say the reason why George Washington was there, the founding father. The first white rappers to break in, white, quote unquote, some people may say like, hey, oh no, they're Jewish, they're not white. They were perceived as white. So that's why we will use that, because it really just matters what people thought of them, not what they thought of themselves or anything else like that. Beastie Boys, I won't say Vanilla Ice because Vanilla Ice had a hit and he was after the Beastie Boys, but Vanilla Ice is not looked back on fondly. He's not highly respected. There is not a lot of, in terms of hip hop and music, he is not cited. Beastie Boys, that album is cited by many. People love it. People only have good things to say about the Beastie Boys, and they were really first. So Beastie Boys have to be there. Now, that's a group versus one face, but we have to put them there. Now, the second one, which I think ties in perfectly for Thomas Jefferson, which also symbolizes the expansion of hip-hop, is Eminem. So Eminem not only took white rap to mainstream dominance, but he took hip-hop as a whole to a global audience. Eminem globalized hip hop. We're talking Asia, South Asia, like India. So many Indians' favorite rapper is Eminem. Still, 20, 30 plus years, damn near 30 years later, 25 plus years later. The UK, the South America, Eminem was able to just transcend and take hip-hop to a level that people had never seen before. Now, there was Tupac and Biggie, but I think the fact that Eminem was white made it so much more marketable to Europe, Russia, Eastern Europe, of course, who also loved 50 Cent, that whole era of shady records. So Eminem has to be on there, regardless of even if you're just doing a top 4 or top 5. So Eminem is the second one. He's the expansion. And then we have Theodore Roosevelt, who should be the development. And this one is a bit difficult. I think this is where people can start to have some sort of, how do you say, debates on. I think the first two are hard to debate. Well, you guys will give me your thoughts in the comment section because I really, really enjoy this conversation so far, even though I'm just talking to myself. But I'm just excited for the comments that are going to come from this. Now, if we're talking about development, I would say it's potentially Mac Miller because after Eminem, there was a lot of just fast rapping white boys. Like, for example, we had Yellow Wolves. We had MGK, who was initially inspired by Eminem. We had a G-Eazy. We had a Logic. A Logic is mixed race, though. So are we going for a purebred? No racial, obviously. Are we going? I think we're just going for a straight up white rapper. So Logic is not here. I don't think Logic would put himself here either. Who else came into the game? We had Lil Dicky, but Lil Dicky's, he doesn't correspond to any of these. We had an Action Bronson, and Action Bronson wasn't really copying Eminem, but a lot of white rappers that came after Eminem were just Eminem style, other than Paul Wall. Paul Wall, obviously, rolling around with Swishahouse Records. He's on the original Mount Rushmore that went viral, but I don't know if Paul Wall is a good enough example of not the expansion, that was the previous one, is a good enough example of the development. If I had to be honest, I would say the development would have to be either Action Bronson or Mac Miller, because those were the two white rappers and Action Bronson's Albanian. They were rappers that just took things to a different level, that separated from Eminem. There wasn't that fast rapping. You could tell they didn't come from the school of Eminem. Of course, they were fans of him. But Action Bronson, for example, he was somebody that blended food, culture, New York culture as well into his bars. And he had, of course, like the Ghostface, Wu-Tang inspiration, which also comes from New York, which is his home city, but he's from Queens. And he had his own style that wasn't a gimmick, but the food that he was a chef, he loves food, became infused with his bars too. So that was something really, that was development in white rap, because we're specifically talking about white rap now for this Mount Rushmore. But there was also Mac Miller, because Mac Miller came in with kind of like frat rap, almost Asher Roth type, but he developed. He also had the ability to rap like Eminem, but he also added this emotional depth. Like, for example, you had like Trump, you had Nike's on My Feet, you had songs like Trump, you had tracks like Wiz Khalifa, because or Wiz Khalifa-esque tracks about like smoking and stuff, relationships. But when you got albums like Watching Movies with the Sound Off, and of course a lot of those mixtapes, Kids mixtape, what's the other one? It started with the letter M. It's escaping me right now. It was actually one of my favorite Mac Miller mixtapes. Macadelic, yeah, Macadelic, Best Day Ever, of course. And then you had him continue to develop. You even had albums like Faces, where you got a lot more of like an emotional, like dark view from Mac Miller, especially with what he was going through in life. So you got a lot of diversity, even Good AM, of course, which I think there was a lot of, let's be honest here, there was a lot of historical revisionism or revisionist history with that album. Like, people, I wouldn't say people who didn't like it. Mac Miller fans definitely did. But people were hating on it and they didn't even want to listen to it. They acted like he fell off when that album dropped. Regardless, though, I think he has to be there because he was the first person where everyone thought he was cool, even though they didn't listen to him. So a lot of people, like for example, he was hanging out with Schoolboy Q, and a lot of people nowadays that aren't white mess with Mac Miller. And like, yeah, Mac Miller was the best white rap. It went so far that people were saying that Mac Miller was better than Eminem. Not at strict rapping, but at music making. So for people that genuinely love hip hop to start having that opinion just goes to show that Mac Miller was able to do something to where he expanded outside of the Mac Miller, or expanded outside of Mac Miller was able to expand outside of the Eminem bubble or formula or rule book of rapping and succeed in that realm within hip hop. It's not like he had a fan base independent of hip hop, which many people had. For example, a Mike Stud would be somebody that was a rapper, but he had a segment of hip hop. He really just had like white fans that were, it was kind of like frat rap, but he had his own unique fan base that wasn't hip hop, even though he was a rapper or is a rapper. Mac Miller, I mean, the guy brought jazz, like introspection, like emotional vulnerability to a different level. Like there wasn't the shock factor. And of course there was emotional vulnerability on albums like Recovery for Eminem, but he expanded what a white rapper could be and still succeed with mass appeal within hip hop. And that's why we have to put him on that Mount Rushmore. It's the development of the white rapper. And the fourth one, this is a difficult one, where you have symbolism. So who helped preserve and expand white rap, which sounds kind of crazy. It's like it's so colonial, but we can just call it preservation, right? Like preserving, because they put Abraham Lincoln on there because it was the preservation of the nation during the Civil War, when it was the Union versus the Confederacy. For those that may not know, overseas, of course, there was the North and the South. Union was in the North. They didn't want slavery, or they didn't even have slaves. Confederacy was in the South. They wanted to. They're the flag, the Confederate flag, that is associated with racism that Americans aren't too fond of. Now, this is for people outside of America, but it's actually for people in America too, because from all those street interviews, apparently Americans don't even know this either. So preservation of white rappers, that's a hard one to put down. And I'm not going to lie, people may not like this. But if we're going to go by this definition, like an actual Mount Rushmore, not just who am I listening to, like who's the best, I think Russ has to be here. Because let's look at all the other names that we can think of, right? Like an MGK is not here. Come on now. With all due respect, like I said, I think MGK is a skilled rapper. But for this particular definition for number 4, it just doesn't sit right with me. And then what? What are we going to put? Like a Lil Peep? Who else can we think of? Asher Roth? There are underground rappers, right? Like A$AP Rock, but they don't fit into these definitions that we were already given of what Mount Rushmore means. And the reason why I put Russ here is he is arguably the most, I would say, people aren't going to like this, and I don't care that they don't like it. Russ might be the most versatile white rapper there has ever been. What white rapper can we name that has rap songs, like him just straight rapping, like traditional rapping, that have tens of millions or 100 million plus streams, of kind of like a motivational rap that's got 100 million plus streams, an R&B track, basically straight up R&B, that's got over 100 million streams, a pop type track that's got over 100 million streams, and like a melodic rap track that's got over 100 million streams, and producing a lot of his music. Because keep in mind, Eminem was also a producer. Mac Miller was also a producer and produced a lot of his own stuff. I'm pretty sure he self-produced. Was it Faces that he self-produced all of it? I'm almost certain it was Faces. I know that he did a majority of the production on there. So Russ has incorporated aspects of Mac Miller, Beastie Boys if you want to go all the way back, but let's be fair. Mac Miller and Eminem and a lot of other rappers he listened to. Like he said, he was a huge Nipsey fan. You can see the Nipsey messaging bleed into Russ's branding. But Russ has done what all of these other guys have laid the foundation for and sat with it and worked with it. Now, he wasn't as favored within hip-hop like Mac Miller is or was, but I think he's the example that we can point out that's done the best for what the fourth person on Mount Rushmore is supposed to represent. So ironically enough, they actually got it correct on that one. But I'm interested to hear what you guys think based on the definition. Like, don't give me your favorite four. Based on the definitions that we have laid out for what Mount Rushmore is, who would you put as the white rapper Mount Rushmore? Let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. And I'll see you in the next one.